Tonight we have a very special guest, a man who has written over 30 books, who's an internationally known figure as an author, lecturer, philosopher, a stand-up comedian, a sit-down comedian, stand-up philosopher, you name it, Mr. Robert Anton Wilson. Bob, thanks very much for being here tonight.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
Good. Now, your latest book is entitled "Everything is Under Control." It's a conspiracy encyclopedia. Is that correct?
Well, it's not exactly an encyclopedia. It's more a chrestomathy. If we did an encyclopedia of all the conspiracy theories around in this country today, it would be at least as long as the Britannica, 22 volumes minimum. This is a chrestomathy. It's some of the wilder and weirder conspiracy. It does cover a lot, though, I must say, as much as one book can.
How did you choose from among the millions of conspiracy theories that are current these days? How did you choose which ones to include in the encyclopedia?
Well, there were a couple of criteria. I wanted to put in the weirdest, craziest, goofiest ones, and I also want to put in the most plausible ones so that the reader would be constantly alternating between laughing out loud at this nonsense and wondering, hey, some of this might be true, which is the ideal state for a reader to be in, I think.
Never knowing whether it's truth or fiction, factor reality. Well, conspiracy is an extremely hot topic these days. Conspiracy theories abound. The X-Files is extremely popular on television. But I know that you've been following conspiracy theories for most of your career, including as far back as 25 years ago with the Illuminatus trilogy that you co-authored with Bob Shea. What got you involved in the interest in conspiracy theories in the first place?
Well, actually, that gets into the new book, too, how it all started. It started with a fellow I used to know named Kerry Thornley, who was one of the co-creators of the only religion I've ever been able to really enjoy, the Discordian religion, which is based on worship of Eris, the goddess of chaos, confusion, discord, bureaucracy, and international relations, the 5 levels of chaos in the world. And, you know, the argument for the existence of Eris is very simple. If Eris doesn't exist, who put all this chaos here? Nobody can answer. Anyway, Kerry got indicted by Jim Garrison as one of the Kennedy assassination team. And Kerry thought at the time, and all of us who knew him thought, that Garrison was just off his head or an unscrupulous demagogue. And then, to our great astonishment, a couple of years later, Kerry announced that he thought it was true, that while he was in the Marines, he thinks he remembers that he volunteered for an experiment, and he thinks they gave him drugs and brainwashed him and turned him into a zombie like the Manchurian Candidate. So he was part of the Kennedy assassination, but he didn't know it. And only he has some memories come back now and then.
Was he one of the fake Oswalds that were?
That was one theory. That was one of the theories Garrison promoted. Kerry met a guy in a bar in New Orleans who he thinks was E. Howard Hunt, who told him he was writing a book called Hitler Was a Good Guy. He doesn't remember anything else of that conversation. He met David Ferry once, another of the leading suspect. He doesn't remember that conversation. He was living 2 blocks from Oswald, whom he knew in the Marines, and he never met him all those months. They were living 2 blocks apart. So Kerry thinks his memory has been tampered with. And at one point he thought I was his CIA babysitter. Then you really involve the conspiracy theory when you got a friend who's accused of being an assassin and he's accusing you of being the CIA mastermind. So you can't ignore the subject after that. That's how I came to write Illuminatus, and after that I can never completely, although I've written on dozens of other subjects, and I hate to be identified with conspiracy theory because I have so many other things that I think are more important that I've written about. But I can't leave it alone entirely because every week in the mail I get tons of stuff by people who've read Illuminatus and want me to be informed about the latest conspiracy that they've just discovered. So I can't get out of the conspiracy field entirely.
Well, what is it about the human psyche that seems to be drawn towards these conspiracy theories? Is it some love of the unknown, or some idea that there may be forces out there that are controlling our destiny? Or
well, I think there are 3 factors. A, nobody likes to take the blame for their own problems, so they look for somebody else to blame. And if you can find a big enough group, you've explained everything in your life that doesn't work.
That's the parental conspiracy theory.
Yeah, it's not your fault. It's the fault. If it's not your fault or your parents, it's the Jesuits, the Freemasons, the Jews, the Bilderbergers, the Council on Foreign Relations, you got a wide choice to pick who to blame.
Rich white man.
Yeah, as long as you don't have to blame yourself. That's one motive. And another motive is that we are living in very weird times. The world is changing faster and faster, which I think is due to the acceleration of information flow in the modern world. Information is increasing, and the transmission of information is going faster and faster due to internet and the whole computer revolution, which means that most people are living in a world they can't understand. And when people can't understand something, they tend to go for sinister explanations of it. Somebody is manipulating things in a way I don't like. That's the way people feel when things change too fast and they can't understand it. And the third reason is, of course, that there are lots of conspiracies around. You're supposed to be a nut if you think about conspiracies, unless you're a district attorney. Then you can bring in 20 people into the court and charge them under the RICO law with conspiracy, even if they never met one another. And I mean, the government does recognize conspiracies. Every government does. There are laws against conspiracy. And conspiracies do exist. The question is, do any really big ones exist, such as the ones imagined in the more extravagant conspiracy theories?
Now, it's interesting that you should bring up that this may be a modern phenomena, because if you go back through history, as you do in the encyclopedia, there have always been conspiracy theories. Was it Ishmael Reed, the novelist, who said the history of the world is the history of the war between secret societies?
Yes, I like that quote quite a bit because there's a certain element of truth in it, but it's just bizarre enough to make people sit up and say, what? Actually, there's this parallel between the present condition and the condition around the year 1000.
Or the other millennium madness.
Yeah, most people think the Christian calendar is the true calendar. I spent the whole year dating all my letters with 11 different dates, just to remind all my correspondents that there's more than one calendar. The millennium is like 600 years away in the Discordian calendar, and it's about 900 years away in the Mayan calendar.
And they've already had 7 millennium changes in the Chinese calendar, I think.
Yes,
so,
and but most people are thinking in terms of the generally accepted calendar, which happens to be a Christian calendar, which is kind of odd since this is not a Christian country.
Well, let's go into that. You've mentioned this before, and I'm fascinated by your theory. It makes more sense than any other political theory I've heard ever. Let's go into this a little. What do you mean, sir, that this is not a Christian country?
Well, for instance, the Constitution never mentions God or Jesus or the Christian religion. It grants absolute freedom for anybody to pick whatever religion they want.
Mentions nature and nature's God.
That's in the Declaration of Independence.
Oh, okay, all right.
And nature's God was a term used by the philosophers of the 18th century to signify an abstract deity who created the world, but has nothing in common with the Christian God, the Jewish God, the Muslim God, the Hindu gods, or any other religious figure. This was a philosophical concept that Jefferson invoked, not a deity that people tried to bribe and get favors from. The deists, who were the dominant party behind our Constitution, the deists believed there was a God, but God did not do favors and could not be bribed, which knocks the bottom out of all organized religion, because all organized religion consists of techniques of how to bribe, cajole, or otherwise get favors out of the deity.
Sounds like Jim Morrison's line, you cannot petition the Lord with a prayer. So.
Well, that's exactly what all the founding fathers thought. I forgot what I was going to add to that, so ask another question.
Oh, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have interrupted you. This is not a Christian country, and I know you had more...
George Washington, for instance, never used the word God in any of his public speeches or any of his private writings. He did use the word providence, which is a concept that deists share with the Orthodox. But when Washington used the word providence, if he had to use a pronoun afterwards, he always varied between he, she, and it. Just to show that he didn't believe in any anthropomorphic. The idea of a God with a penis has always seemed hilarious to me. And now that the feminists are offering us a God with a vagina, that seems equally ridiculous. I'm more inclined to the it school of thought. Any cosmic mind has got to be an it. I can't imagine it being a sexual creature. Well, if God is sexual, what kind of sex life does God have?
Pretty barren, I would imagine, if there's no goddess. around to take care of him. Now, let's backtrack for just a second. If this is not a Christian country, we can kind of indicate that the founders of the country were all Masons. So this is more a Masonic country?
Most of them were Masons, yeah. Well, the Constitution has a lot in common with the rules of a Masonic lodge, actually.
And doesn't that get right back to the conspiracy theory of a secret society?
A lot of right-wingers think we have been run by a Masonic conspiracy. One of the theories I trace through this whole book, and has many variations, the theory that the French Revolution was a Masonic conspiracy. There are various Masonic lodges that are blamed by different conspiracy theorists. Some think it's Masonry in general. Some think it's just the Grand Orient Lodge of Egyptian Freemasonry. Some want to blame the Grand Orange Lodge of Ireland. It depends on where you look at, what part of the political spectrum you're looking from, which Masons you're most afraid of. I got a lot of friends who are Masons, so I'm not afraid of any of them.
Well, you don't seem to be afraid of much of anything. For a person who's an expert in conspiracies, you're probably the least paranoid person I've ever met. You have all the data, but none of the fear that most everybody else who's involved in conspiracy theories.
Well, my belief is I don't believe in one big conspiracy that runs everything. That seems absurd to me, and there's so much evidence against it. I have more sympathy for theories like Carl Oglesby's Yankee and Cowboy War, where the ruling class is split and at war with itself, or the A. Albionic theory, where the British royal family and the Vatican have been fighting for 300 years, and everything else is the result of these two major conspiracies of the British royal family and the Vatican. But even that seems oversimplified. I prefer to think there's, at minimum, at any given time, there's about 24 conspiracies afoot. Carl Oglesby, the historian, once said, "A multitude of conspiracies contend in the night." And as far as I have been able to discover in all my years of being involved in, more or less unwillingly in this field, I cannot find any proof of any conspiracy that really existed, was really brought into court and convicted, that lasted more than 10 years before everybody double-crossed everybody else and the conspiracy fell apart.
It's more of a conspiracy of stupidity, it seems like, is running the planet.
I think that is the strongest conspiracy on the planet, is the conspiracy of the stupid.
Yeah.
To prevent schools from educating their children, because they want their children to be as dumb as they are, to prevent television from putting anything intelligent on as much as possible. To keep
with the exception of this half hour, of course.
Well, of course, yes. Present company excluded.
Well, you're half right. But, but now, are there since you've done massive research on the numerous conspiracy theories, are there certain hallmarks of a good conspiracy? Are there certain things that the best conspiracies have in common, like shadowy historical roots, or a conspiracy to control one particular aspect of life or the mind?
What I have noticed, it's hard to pick a favorite. It depends on whether you want the craziest one or the most plausible one.
I'm just wondering if they have anything in common. Something.
Well, when you get into the more science fiction type conspiracy theories,
the X-Files type.
Yeah, well, there are more X-Files type theories around than they've done on X-Files itself. There are so many conspiracy theories about various aliens meddling with us. This goes back to Charles Fort, who in the 1920s wrote a couple of books on that theme. There's all sorts of ideas about who it is, whether they come from Sirius or Zeta Reticuli, whether they're Greys or some other types,
or all of the above.
And when you get into that literature enough, you find out that it's the most science fiction and futuristic theories are curiously the most medieval. What it comes down to is a battle between good and evil on a cosmological level, with the Earth as just one part of the major. It goes back before Christianity to Zarathustra, who had the Ahriman and Mazda, these two gods who are in perpetual war with each other. And in Christianity, they made the good one God and the bad one the devil. But in Zarathustrianism, you're never quite sure who's the good one or the bad one. You got to make a choice, but you don't know you're choosing correctly. You don't know who's going to win, which I find more interesting. It is. It's more existentialist if you recognize your own uncertainty.
Well, is there a possibility then that some of these science fictional conspiracies, the Philip K. Dick type conspiracies, the X-File type conspiracies that are floating around now, are an upcoming mythology, somehow more related to the emergence of a new mythology in the human mind than they are to actual physical events that are taking place on Earth with physical aliens and physical UFOs?
Well, they're definitely mythology in the Jungian sense. I don't mean to say that they're all false. I don't know enough to say anything is all false. Some of them are so absurd that I can reject them, but some of them are more plausible than others. But they make a mythology in the sense that they give you a cosmic theory that explains everything and gives you a place in the universe and so on. Carl Jung spotted that way back in the 40s. He wrote, 52 I think it was, not the 40s. He wrote a book called Flying Saucers, A Modern Myth of Things Seen in the Skies, in which he predicted this would be the major religion of the second half of the 20th century, and we're more and more moving toward that.
Well, didn't
more and more the extraterrestrials are replacing angels and demons.
Right.
There are good extraterrestrials and bad extraterrestrials. And not only that, but we got the incubi and succubi back too. In the Middle Ages, they had these sex demons that attacked people in their sleep. Now they're extraterrestrials instead of being demons, but they're still attacking people in their sleep.
Still absconding with them, mating with them, probing them, and doing...
Yeah, there's some place in a galaxy far, far away, according to this school of thought, where they get it, whenever they're really high on some really vicious kind of chemical, they suddenly all say, let's go down to Earth and have a go at somebody's butt again, you know.
Take on Whitley Strieber again.
Yeah.
It was fun. Didn't Jacques Vallée, the French writer, do a whole book about the correspondences between the hallmarks of UFO sightings and sightings of the Holy Virgin Mary?
Yes, there's a whole bunch of parallels. The Fatima. The miracles at Fatima, which included light brighter than the sun, which plunged toward the earth, and strange sounds in the sky, music coming from the heavens and whatnot. It would be a UFO sighting if the kids didn't say they saw the Virgin Mary.
So maybe UFOs are just the modern mind's way of attaching some kind of explanation to some experience that's beyond explanation.
Yeah, I personally believe very strongly in UFOs because, well, I see 3 or 4 of them every week. I told that to airplanes that you don't know the name. Yeah, I told that to a friend of mine. He really looked like, oh my God, you really have gone crazy at last. But what I mean is the sky is full of things that I can't identify. I don't know what they are. But not only that, but there are UNFOs too, unidentified non-flying objects. I see them all the time.
In the garden.
That could be because I had a lot of training in general semantics and I'm not quick to identify things. All my identifications are tentative.
It sounds like George C. Scott and Dr. Strangelove. I'd just like to wait till all the facts are in, sir. Well, do you have is there one or more conspiracies that really appeal to you, that tickle you beyond all fancy? That either are so absurd that they just make you laugh out loud, or so realistic that they might actually have a chance to be true?
Well, there are quite a few that amuse me. What comes to mind right off the top of my head is Lyndon LaRouche has come up with some of the most wonderful conspiracy theories of all. But my favorite, I think, is the little pamphlet he wrote about Henry Kissinger called Kissinger, The Politics of Faggotry, which shows just how far out LaRouche is. He prefers the word faggot to gay because he knows it's more insulting. Somebody who writes like that, you know he's not trying to convince everybody. He just wants to have a small cult of true believers. At least that's what his style sounds like to me. Kissinger's wife slugged one of LaRouche's disciples for tracking them through an airport, yelling at her, your husband goes for little boys, you know, your husband goes for little boys. She decked him.
Well, the conspiracy of everything is under control, the conspiracy of, the Encyclopedia of Conspiracy Theories is due out in bookstores in July.
That's right.
That's correct. And what are you working on now? I know most of your fans are clamoring for more fiction.
Well, I'm working on a rewrite of the New Inquisition.
Okay.
And I'm also working on a rewrite of what used to be Playboy's Book of Forbidden Words, which Playboy doesn't have the rights to anymore. It's going to be published by Hull House here in San Jose.
I am familiar with them.
You're familiar with Hull House? Yeah, it's named after Uncle Ho.
Yeah, the Chinese god of laughter.
That's right.
Or Ho Chi Minh, or
well, one of them. Some wise Oriental sage. Just because it sounds like an old joke about New Orleans.
Or just because, it takes on a whole different meaning in New Orleans.
The old joke about New Orleans is any man who gets off the train there has one thought in mind: do I check into the hotel first, or do I go to the Hull House right away? But. One of the ones that really fascinates me is the Howard Hunt, Richard Nixon, Flight 553, Bay of Pigs mystery.
Oh, that's right. I was supposed to mention that, and I forgot. So please do go on.
Well, in the Watergate tapes, Nixon tells Dean Hunt wants $1 million. And Dean tells Nixon that Hunt wants $1 million, and Nixon says, well, I can get $1 million.
Oh, I know this quote. I can do it. We could get $1 million. We could do it. We could do it. It wouldn't be easy, but we could do it.
Yeah, then he goes on and says Hunt might spill the whole Bay of Pigs thing. And then later he said that to Haldeman in another tape. He said, Hunt is threatening to spill the whole Bay of Pigs thing. Now, I wrote a book many years ago in which I asked the question, what Bay of Pigs thing hadn't come out by 1974 that Nixon was willing to pay $1 million to cover up? Well, it seems that Ehrlichman, in his book about the Watergate scandals, and A.J. Weberman, who has the biggest and best JFK assassination site on the web, it's a hard one to read. You got to scroll down each page before you can get to the next. Very old-fashioned, but it's got more data in it than any other. Weberman has done a lot of research on that too, and it seems that Nixon had a code he used for certain subjects. And the whole Bay of Pigs thing was his code for the Kennedy assassination. Oh. And if that's true, if Ehrlichman is telling the truth and Weberman has got the backup evidence correct, then Hunt was threatening to reveal something about the Kennedy assassination that Nixon was willing to pay $1 million to cover up. This is the kind of theory that I find remotely plausible and not totally crazy. Because Nixon did start paying the money to Hunt, and Hunt's wife was carrying some of it when she was on a plane that crashed under very mysterious circumstances, Flight 553.
And because these are people who wouldn't involve themselves in flights of fancy, this is something concrete that they're talking about too.
Well, Nixon's willing to pay $1 million to cover it up. It means something.
Yes.
And Flight 553, the pilot who, eerily enough, was named Captain Whitehouse, he had a lot of cyanide in his bloodstream, which is the explanation. The official explanations of that are it was gas released when the plane crashed, but the critics claim that he couldn't get that much cyanide from that, or it would have to be put into him in his drink or something like that. But the Spotlight magazine printed the photographs of the three tramps with Howard Hunt, an attempt to show one of the three tramps on the grassy knoll was Howard Hunt.
Behind the fence in the grassy knoll.
And he sued them for libel, and he lost. The jury not only found Spotlight innocent, but one of the foremen of the jury told the press afterwards that the defense counsel, Mark Lane, by the way, she said, Mr. Lane wanted us to believe the government shot the president. After we examined all the evidence, we came to the conclusion the government did shoot the president.
Well, is there anybody looking into these things besides yourself?
Oh, yeah, there's the Assassination Investigation Committee in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Okay. They are very well informed about all this. They got a list of over 100 people connected with the Kennedy assassination who also died
under
very mysterious circumstances, like Albert Guy Bogard.
Right, Dorothy Kilgallen was
Albert Guy Bogard was an automobile salesman who said Harvey Oswald came in, took a car for a test drive, went 70 miles an hour on the freeway, and gave him a lot of pro-Soviet propaganda. and said he was coming into a lot of money. Now, Oswald did not drive.
Maybe it was Kerry Thornley.
Maybe it was Kerry Thornley. It was, well, he's called the second Oswald, the guy in that story, who appears several times around Dallas in mysterious contexts. But Albert Guy Bogart, after telling that story, he was found dead in a cemetery, shot through the head, pronounced suicide. There's so many people who committed suicide.
Under mysterious, non-suicidal type circumstances.
George Demoranschild, who was a friend of Oswald's, even though he was a CIA operative and very anti-Soviet. When he was subpoenaed by the House Select Committee on Assassinations, he was found dead and pronounced a suicide, although his wife refused to accept that. Sam Giancana, who's suspected by a lot of people, think the mafia were involved. As soon as he got a subpoena from the House Select Committee on Assassinations, he was shot through the mouth. The mafia calls that sasso in bulka. That's punishment for suspected informers. Johnny Roselli, when he got his subpoena, he disappeared and showed up floating in a barrel in the Gulf of Mexico. I could go on and on. The Cambridge, like I said, this group in Cambridge has over 100 cases like that. It does make you wonder.
Yeah, but unfortunately, we're almost out of time, so we can't go through all 100 of them. But
I don't know all the 100. I'm not that.
Well, it's about time to wrap things up, so let me mention once again the Robert Anton Wilson's newest book is Everything is Under Control, the Encyclopedia of Conspiracy Theories. You can also find out more about this book and conspiracy theories in general on the web, www.blackops.com, a wonderful website for conspiracies.
Or they can try my own website, www.rawilson.com.
It was the source for much amusement and information and enlightenment as well.
And I think it has the best set of links of any website around. From my page, you can go anywhere you want on there. You can find all sorts of weird things.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Robert Anton Wilson, for being with us tonight.
It was a privilege being here.
It was a pleasure to have you.
Let's go out and get drunk.
I'm right behind you, big guy.